Do we not have internet? Anyway, we're good. All right. So last time we finished off what I refer to as this bottom section. So I kind of showed you how I would draw this. I showed 3 different ways. This was the 3rd way. And they all have their pros and cons. I thought this was a good compromise. There's no shapes overlapping each other, but I didn't have to use the line tool and draw a million lines. So it's kind of a good compromise. And then when I did the extrusion, I only had to click on 3 things, which isn't that bad as opposed to like 5 and I had stuff overlapping. And then I showed, I'm not going to show it again, but I showed that if you use the fillet tool in the sketch, sometimes it breaks your constraints or your dimensions. In this case, what it broke was equal constraints. I had an equal constraint for this line segment to this line segment. And then when I filleted the corners, those line segments got altered and it broke the equal constraint. And I didn't want to go reapply it. I could have. I didn't. And so I showed that sometimes it's easier to do fillets as features. Okay? That's just me personally. I try to do them as features, but it's not wrong to do them in the sketch. Okay, the order you do things matters. You would probably want to do the fillets first and then go and do your dimensions and equal constraints, you know. One of those things you learn in hindsight. These fillets here, you'll note, are a different radius than these fillets here. Okay, which are a different radius than these fillets. So I did 3 different radii, a little ballparky, but these outer ones I made 3 millimeters. These inner ones I made 2, and these smaller kind of, quote, inner and outer ones I made 1. And then I ended with drawing this sketch here on top. This is like the bottom of the top half. So if we hold it like this, right, I've basically drawn the bottom of the top half. Are we good? Yes, say yeah? And what I'm going to do now, you're just going to have to kind of trust me on this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the top of the top half. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hide this plane right here just so it's not as cluttered. Okay. So this plane here is the top plane. I'm going to hide it. And then this is the right plane. I'm going to hide it as well. I'm not deleting them. I go to my table of contents over here. I hover over it. I see the eyeball. I can display it or not display it by clicking the eyeball. Why am I doing this? What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a plane that's going to be kind of like up in the air, up here. And I'm going to sketch on that plane. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hide the front plane as well. All right. What I'm going to do, so here is kind of the top, so to speak, right? If I arrange my view cube like this, where I see the front, right, and top side, I'm going to click on this. I'm going to like drag a plane out. Okay, so I'm not in a sketch, so I'm seeing the 3D features in my toolbars. This one's called plane. We see this? Yes, say yeah. I'm going to click on it, and there's a million different things you can do, but the default is just offset. You basically click on a surface, and then it just offsets the plane relative to that surface. We see that? Yes, say yeah. You can click wherever you want. Like I could click here, for example. Okay, it doesn't really matter where you click. I'm going to click in the middle. It does not matter how big this plane is. Literally irrelevant. Planes are always infinitely sized. This is just like a visual thing. Okay, don't read anything into how big that is. All right? But notice that it's projected it kind of off in space. And this offset distance would naturally be the height of this top half. Okay, and I'm getting around 12. So I'm just going to make it offset by 12. Okay, so I have this plane that's 12 away that I can now draw on. Hopefully that makes sense, I hope. Yes, yeah, we're good? And you'll see why I need to do it this way in a moment. But suffice to say, I can't just do a simple extrusion. The reason why I can't just do a simple extrusion, if you look in between these clips, you'll see that that part in there is angled. It's not just going straight up. It's kind of angled. And there's different ways you can tackle that. But the way that I'm going to have us do is, I think, the easiest, simplest way, requires no math, and it's just going to be, I think, the best way to do it. So click, you got your plane made, okay? So this sketch here, I still have a sketch 1, all right? I'm going to call this the top section. And I was going to call the top section's bottom, which is, I know, a lot, but it's top section, but it's the bottom of the top section, okay? And then I'm going to make a sketch in this plane. So notice where the sketch is, right? It's in this plane floating in air. And I'm going to rename it the top section's top. So it's the top of the top section. Okay? Are we good so far? Perhaps, maybe, yes, yeah. And what I'm going to do, right here, there's this use, and it says project/convert in parentheses. We see that? Yes, say yeah? Yeah? So what I'm going to start off with is, I'm going to start off with projecting this square and this square. Sound good? Yeah? Yeah. So you can see I've just projected those. We're good? Yeah? Again, there's this project button, right? So what I did is I'm in this plane that's up in space. But I clicked on these squares that I drew previously. Yes? Yes? And by projecting them, I don't have to recreate them. I don't have to redimension them. They're already exactly they were in the previous drawing. Okay? We good so far? Yeah? But this middle section, I am not going to project a square. I'm just going to project the origin. We see this origin here? I'm just going to project it. Okay, so I have like a dot in the middle. And I'm going to draw a center point rectangle on this center, but it's not going to go all the way to this edge here. It's going to be a little smaller. Do you see how it's smaller? It's narrower than the part below it, which jives with what we see right here, where it definitely is angled up and it shrinks as it goes higher up. And now I just need to dimension that. And you can get your calipers and you can dimension that. Since it's an angled surface, you don't want your teeth to go too far down.
Just come in from a
Huh? So I'm getting about 8, somewhere around there, 7.5, 8. So just to be clear, what I did here, so I drew this, that's the top section's bottom, and I drew these rectangles here and here, and I drew one here, right? And then I used the plane tool, and I made a plane, this one right here, offset from this surface. I offset it by 12. So somewhere around there. As you can see, it's offset from the surface, okay? And then I drew on there top section's top part. You can see that this square here lines up perfectly with the square in the part below. And I used the project tool to do that. I clicked on the project tool and I was able to click on this square below and it projected it up here. But then the middle one, I just drew a center point rectangle and made sure it lined up with the origin again, but it's a little bit narrower than the part below. I did all of that, and I only had to put one dimension. This is the value of using symmetry and project. We good? Maybe, possibly? Okay. So I got these two sketches. And what I want to do is I want to use the loft tool. Y'all ready for this? I'll click on loft. All right, what loft does is it connects one shape and morphs it into another shape. Now, this may not work out as well as I was hoping. That's fine. But I'll tell you why we wanted to use a loft. If you click, so the loft tool, by the way, it looks kind of like a cone with the top chopped off. If your first click is this rectangle in the middle on the bottom, and your second click is this rectangle up here in the middle, you'll notice that it lofts those pretty good. And see what it did there. See what it did? It made it at an angle. We see that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't have to do any math to calculate that angle, right? I would have had to have done that if I tried to do extrusion with a draft angle. I'd have to like calculate that angle, which is a lot of work. And there's going to be some rounding error. This is way better. This is way better. And so I lofted that. I think I accidentally maybe had it as a surface. I don't know why it's on surface. Make sure it's on the solid tab. I don't really know why it was on the surface tab, but it was. If you try to do the other ones, it's not going to probably work out so well. Okay. There it is. We're good? Yeah. Now, you can do an extrusion or a loft here. You can do whatever you want. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to these sketches. Every time you use this sketch the first time, it automatically hides it once you've used it because it figures, oh, you don't want to see that. It'll be in the way. But you can go back and you can make these sketches reappear with the eyeballs. And now I can do a loft, and I can loft this one to this one. There's another loft. And I can do another loft again. I can do this one to this one. Now, is the loft absolutely necessary? No. I could have done that left and right side with just a regular extrusion. Okay? And I'm going to prove that. I'm going to delete that loft. I'm going to leave this one. I'm just going to do a regular extrusion. And you'll see, for example, as long as I put in the correct height, that it looks identical. There's no difference between the left and the right side. They look identical. Okay? So I could have done extrusion for that, or a loft, either or. Doesn't really matter. But that middle, the loft, is really the only way to do that well, in my opinion. Okay? So you have some options there, whether you want to do a loft or you want to do an extrusion. Doesn't really matter. But whatever you do, always, always, always name it. So I'll call this one the top's left part. I'll call this one the top's middle part. and I'll call this third one the top's right part. We good? Yeah? Okay. So we're not done, obviously. We're going to do some more fillets. Okay? We're going to do some more fillets. So this fillet here was a 2mm fillet. Okay? That's probably the same fillet running up here. Little pro tip. Okay? You can do that all as the same fillet. So, for example, instead of adding another fillet, so there's be another feature in here, I could just go into this fillet and I would just be able to click and add more things to fillet that. Philosophical question. When I go into this inner bound fillet, why don't I see any of the top half of the part? What do you think?
It thinks you don't need it.
I don't know that I would say it thinks you don't need it, but it does think something. As much as an inanimate object can think anyway. What do you guys think? Why when here, watch. I'll go to this sketch, right? In this sketch, I don't see in the top half. Why is that? Why?
Because it happened before.
Yeah, you're right. The order in which I do them matters, right? Anything before I do these lofts is not going to see these. So watch this. This inner fillet, if you click and drag it to be below these fillets, okay, then you can select multiple things. Now, there's a price you pay for doing that, and that is, as you can see, some of these red things were relying on those fillets. Okay? So you got to be careful of doing that. One might make the case, and I can understand this argument, that if you're going to fillet features, you do it at the very, very end. It's one of the last things that you do. Okay? Usually second only to a shell. Shell might be the very, very last thing, because a shell, you need those fillets to round the corners, and then you shell so it goes or follows those rounded corners. Or you can apply a second fillet. All right, you can do a fillet and just make it a separate one. Okay? There's different ways you can do this. But you need to get fillets on this corner and this corner, these outer corners. You need to get fillets that are just like this. This was a 2mm along here. And then 1mm fillets you can do. You probably don't even have to fillet this if you don't want to. This edge right here. It's like barely rounded. I've cleaned this up some. Some things that I have done. When I did this top section, by having these fillets come later, I've just made a rectangle. There was no rounded corners here then when I made it because I made these fillets later. So then this got fixed when I projected this. I was only projecting a rectangle. There's no rounded corners. I still did my lofts, but then I did those fillets together, and these are 2. I did these outer ones on the bottom as 3, and the outer ones on the top are not the same size. I actually made them 1.5, so that this distance is the same all the way around. They're actually not the same size as the ones below them. And then these small inner ones that are 1. I don't think that those really apply to the parts above. They just only are on the bottom. We have questions. You gotta do it again, man?
It didn't have batteries in it.
Huh?
The thing didn't have batteries.
Go get it.
Yeah. I did.
That's a 9-volt. These are no battery at all?
Yeah.
We're getting 1 volt, 504. This should be like on the middle shelves on the right side in the cabinets.
Okay, folks, what we're going to do now is we're going to do the holes on the top. You shouldn't need me to do that, okay? I have circular holes. Your holes might be different, but you've already made these shapes before because you already did them when you made this wooden part. Does it work now? Hey, does it work now?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to make those. What I would encourage you to do is I would encourage you to go back to your main body, and I would encourage you to look here and see what dimensions you use. So for me, okay, I had them at a diameter of 13, and I had them 4 away from the edge of this hole. So if I do a little bit of math here, this is 55 wide. If I take 4 away from this side, that's 51. I take another 4 away from the other side, that's 47. So it'd be 47 outer edge to outer edge of the holes, or those circles, right? 47. So I'm going to go back to my connector piece, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a sketch. You can make this plane hidden, by the way. We don't need to see that no more. So I'm going to make a sketch on this plane. And I'm going to draw my circles. I'm going to start by the cursor over the origin, and then I'm going to go to the side so that when I draw my circle, it's already lined up with that.
I'm 4 under.
4. Hey, by the way, do me a solid.
Go drink some
Just if
water.
you think of it, tell people that scale is an industrial scale. It's accurate to the nearest half pound.
Yeah, I went to like 124.
So if you're a pound under, you're for sure good. If it says 0.5 under, you're not actually 0.5 under. You're anywhere from 0 under to half a, or like 3/4 of a pound under.
Okay.
So it wouldn't hurt to tell people that so that they know.
Okay.
So I'm going to drag this over and I'm draw my other circle. Okay. And then what constraint would I use to make my circles the same size?
Mirror.
What now?
Mirror.
Not mirror. I already drew them separate. All right. Yeah. I click here. I go to equal constraint. Don't click on parallel. That's not an equal constraint. Okay. Unequal. Make this circle equal to this circle. I can dimension one of them. 13 was the number I got from my wooden body. Remember my main body, right? I got this was 13. Okay, right here. And I just math this out. But from outer edge to outer edge, it was 47. So I'm going to go back here into this sketch. Okay. So if I just click on this circle and try to like dimension it, it's not going to work. So what you can do here is you can place points. This point tool is really helpful. So like I can place a point on the edge of my circle, and if I pay attention, I get that dashed line. I can line it up with something like the center of the circle or the origin so that it's aligned horizontally. And now I can dimension from here to here. That's 47. The only issue of doing this is I haven't dimensioned anything else to lock them in place. We see the issue here, yes, say yeah, which is not ideal. So you have some options. There are some tricks you could do to make this symmetric. Okay? But something that you could also do is, if we go back here, this hole is supposed to be 55 wide. And if I go to my connector piece, all right, in theory, this width should also be 55. In fact, let me get the dimension tool. And it is, because I did a good job measuring. But in theory, it should be the same, right? Because it should fit perfectly in there. And so, because I know that they're the same size, I actually can dimension it the exact same way that I did on that passenger section wood piece. I can make this 4 and this 4. The only risk with doing this is, what if the connector piece wasn't exactly the same dimension, right? So if I go to my main body here, I look at this, I'll put this a little bit at an angle, I look at this back hole. I said this is 55 wide. Okay, fine. But what if that hole was not exactly the same width as the piece of plastic right here that goes in that hole? What if it was a little bit smaller, right? Then this number would not be the same. But we talked about this when we were making this in the beginning, that we were going to make all of our things match up perfectly, because we're not 3D printing this. We're not actually manufacturing this. It's just all on the computer. So we're just going to make them match up perfectly. In the real world, you probably would never make this the exact same size as the hole that it's going to go into, because it might not fit then, right? But I have just taken the same dimensions from that. So I could have dimensioned the center to center, or from outer edge to outer edge. All right? Or I could just use this dimension. If you want to know a trick, how could I have made these line up?
Okay.
Take care, don't die out there. Without like, how could I make it centered without knowing this dimension from the edge of this to the edge of this shape? There's a couple tricks you could do. One, you could draw a line from the center of the overall shape to the center of each circle. So those are two separate lines. And then I can set them equal to each other. And then I would only have to dimension one, or I could dimension the distance between the two. Okay, I can put a dimension there and then lock in. Another thing you could do is you could get one of them to be exactly how you want. Maybe I know how far this is supposed to be from the center. I'm not saying it's the right dimension, but let's just leave it for a moment. And then I could use the mirror tool. And I could mirror this circle about the plane that cuts in half, which would be this plane right here, the right plane. Okay, I could mirror it as well. That's another option. Regardless, though, at some point, I'm going to have to dimension something. And the dimension that I do is going to have to match what's in this wooden section here. So, if you want to do it right, my recommendation would be go see how wide this is. Make sure that your overall shape is the same width on this connector piece. And then you can match something like this dimension here. I always encourage using the same dimensions as something else, because if it was easy to understand and work the first time, it's going to work the second time, right? If you start trying to do mental math or math to figure out how to dimension something else, like the center to center or whatever, you introduce more propensity to error. Does this make sense? Maybe, possibly, I hope. Do we have questions before we move on? So I've deliberately shown you a variety of ways to do this, because there is always multiple ways to do most of these things. And I don't want you to get too grounded in this mentality. There's only one way to do it. You can go to the wooden section thing here, and you can see how big were those circles. I extruded them 12. All right. So then when I go to my connector piece, when I cut these in with an extrusion, I will use the remove option in the extrusion. I know they better be, at least 12. Possibly deeper. Let's find out. Yeah, 12's fine. And so I have my holes. I'm going to call these circular holes. Questions before we move on? Okay, that puts us